Starting things off, Neil, here with WWE's latest round of talent cuts. Care to take things away?
That's right. Well, yeah. I mean, if any of our listeners have been on social media this evening, or in group chats, or on their discords and all the rest, they will have heard about this. WWE has engaged in probably the biggest round of post-Mania cuts in years. I don't remember the last time it was of this scale. We're up into 20 plus talents gone across the main roster, NXT, and the developmental system. A couple of caveats. We don't know how many of these talents, have been their contracts may have lapsed and not been renewed, or are cuts in the sense of being released from their contracts. But given that they're all coming on the one day, I think we can probably safely assume a lot of them are releases. We have to tip our hats to reporting from Fightful and from PW Insider. There's also quite a few talents have taken to social media themselves to acknowledge that they've gone. I think the headline is probably, if you could sum it up into like one big group, it's the Wyatt Six. They're done. All 5 members are out. Bo Dallas, Nikki Cross, Joe Gacy, Dexter Lumis, Eric Rowan. The faction that debuted in June 2024 as a kind of tribute to the Bray Wyatt character in really a fine style of entrance. As we remember it, the found footage of the videos and the kind of the build up to all of this was great. But as Wyatt and I have discussed for several weeks on SmackDown, perhaps this group has run out of creative steam. But still to get rid of all of them in one go, it's a lot. It's gone way beyond the Wyatts. Among the bigger names are Kairi Sane. I found this one quite surprising. I mean, she was right in the middle of a pretty lengthy storyline, particularly with Asuka and this sort of being dominated by Asuka as the Senpai storyline. Also tied in with Io and Rhea. Her last match was on the April 20th Raw, teaming with Asuka against Rhea and Sky. This one feels strange to me.
Yeah. Before we maybe talk a little bit about every single person, I think we should go through just the entire list, just off the bat, and
Sure.
maybe we shall read it as of our post wrestling post here. So this is in alphabetical order, but we start things off with Alba Fire, and of course this is only updated as of 11:19 p.m. Eastern time, so this could change by the time many of you may be listening to this. But as of now, Alba Fire, Aleister Black, Alex Shelley, Andre Chase, Apollo Crews, Bo Dallas, Chris Island, Chris Sabin, Dante Chen, Dexter Lumis, Eric Rowan, Joe Gacy, Kairi Sane, Luca Crucifino, Malik Blade, Nikki Cross, Santos Escobar, Serena Linton, Trill London, Tyra May Steele, Tariq Igwe, Tyson DuPont, Zelina Vega, and Zoe Stark are the names reported so far to have been to be departing the WWE. Maybe we should touch on some maybe one of the more attention grabbing ones of the list is the entire Wyatt Six, as you alluded to, Neil. I feel they had a great spark with these initial vignettes. Some of the I think best parts of the Bray Wyatt character I thought were very well exemplified in these sort of teasers. Everything they did, that opening scene on Raw, which maybe might have been divisive, but I would say largely, met with positivity. But for me, I feel like the turning point was once they moved to SmackDown. They were reduced suddenly to just being this very generic, spooky villain group with very little depth to them. And of course, engaging in an endless feud, seemingly with the the MFTs over this lantern, certainly cooled them off. They became, I think, a lot more less intimidating, less novel, and at some point, just a tag team that was honestly quite average. They won the tag team championships. It was not a run that I thought offered much notable. In fact, I think it kind of cooled down the division a little bit, which I wouldn't entirely place on them, but they weren't delivering the quality of matches that I think the division was known for prior. But would you say overall there was more potential, or that this group ran its course?
It's weird because we were talking about this last week, and my sense was that this gimmick had run out of steam, that it had played out. Even the entrance wasn't really getting the sort of pop that it used to get from people in attendance. And it's one of those ones, if you're in the arena, you feel, a kind of a wow factor from. I just think they were retreading the same thing the whole time. I agree with you that the titles did nothing for the group. In fact, when it comes to the in-ring, it almost takes away some of the mystique of these characters. I can well understand how even some of the brightest sparks in the creative team might have been throwing their hands up and saying, we just don't know what to do with these folks anymore. And I'm sure they were being pitched stuff from the talent themselves. And it all goes to a larger point for me, which is that perhaps instead of repackaging wrestlers, which is what we used to see happen quite a bit, is there's now this endless pipeline through LFG to evolve to NXT to the main roster. And I feel like behind all of this, and it's a larger point maybe, is instead of taking an existing talent and trying to give them something new in terms of a creative direction, they can just call up someone else, and it's cheaper as well, probably, instead of a long tenured talent.
Some reaction here publicly here. Nikki Cross does say, goodbye and thank you, WWE. This is from X. I'm really excited for whatever my next chapter will hold. Thank you all for the continued love and support. Special thank you to Robbie Brookside and William Regal for helping this dream come true. Thank you to the wrestlers, coaches, producers, and all the backstage crew who make all this possible. To the amazing girls in the locker room, heart emoji. Joe Gacy simply throws up a peace sign emoji saying LOL. And we also have Dexter Loomis showing a still of him, displaying a hatchet during some might consider the peak of his run, which was his wedding in NXT, of course, to Indy Hartwell. I mean, I wonder if those two might reunite somewhere. That opens the door, certainly. Yeah. Kairi Sane, you were saying before I cut you off, Neil, your thoughts?
I'm surprised by this one. I just wonder, did Kairi want to leave? It's this one's fairly baffling to me because of, as I was mentioning earlier on, as I alluded to, the length of the storyline between her, particularly between her and Asuka. This really felt like there was a destination of the two of them in a program, and it goes back for months at this point. She was active in the ring as recently as a couple of weeks ago on Raw. No, as recently as this Monday on Raw, in fact, in that tag match. So she's not injured, or I don't think she is. This one to me is one of the more perplexing. Not someone you would have thought would be on the chopping block. Not someone you thought was creatively bereft. I thought the Kabuki Warriors were great together. Interested in your thoughts, Wyatt?
Completely. Like, she would have been one of those names that I actually felt, you could have certainly justified a spot on WrestleMania, and I would think anybody who'd, be an announcer at a WrestleMania level show would probably be safe from this sort of thing. Again, you bring up a great point. We don't exactly know the reason why she might be leaving. She voluntarily left the first time. Is probably to be closer to home. We don't know if that's the case this time, but it is rather unfortunate we never got finality for this particular story between her and Asuka that has been, continuing as recently as this past Monday. So felt very sudden. This run when she came back since 2023, joining Damage Control, I can't really say I was too impressed by to start. I certainly feel like, there was a lot more sloppiness in her in-ring work, at least to start. But somewhere along the way, she certainly found her groove back and suddenly just developed this incredible story and incredible relationship with Asuka and doing the Senpai Kohai thing that I, again, am sort of sad that we never really got a full conclusion for. Because in the end of all that, there was that one point, Neil, where I felt Kairi would have emerged out of all of this as the biggest babyface. Certainly the most sympathetic coming off of this Asuka thing. And whether it be to team with Io or to oppose Io or to oppose Asuka, I think you could have ended up with Kairi Sane at a much higher level on the card than she unfortunately ended up in.
Agreed, and I feel like that was clearly the plan as well, creatively. So this one is perplexing. We just don't know what's behind it. Aleister Black's another fairly notable one way because he's been released for the second time now. I mean, he's only been back for about a year. Never really found second gear after that initial run with Damian Priest. His last match was in the Andre Battle Royal last week. With him, we have to say goodbye to Zelina as well, his wife. She's been working more recently as his on-screen manager, but has been Queen of the Ring, has been in the LWO, has been women's US champion.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for Tommy End? I wonder at this point. Would
Well, I'll tell you.
AEW
I'll
take
tell
it
you
back?
what was up next immediately for Zelina Vega, and that was going on her Twitch stream, which I imagine she probably still does regularly, but she happened to go on pretty much right as this news broke. So I caught a little bit of it because, of course, I did have to cover SmackDown tonight. But
Sure.
what like she was talking quite freely, it seemed, and what I did catch was of her talking about how of her Black, the Wyatt Six, that WWE didn't really know what to do with supernatural type characters. So, she seemingly showing some frustration about maybe the way their characters were handled. This is one that, I mean, for months, Neil, like they've been building, they essentially put Aleister Black and Zelina in the same role that Karrion Kross and Scarlett were playing,
Yeah.
as the devil on various babyfaces' shoulders, urging them to turn heel, basically. And they were not like, they were much more protective of Aleister Black, at least in ring. They gave him wins recently over Randy Orton and Sami Zayn,
Yep.
two very high ranking guys. Now, it's one of those where, like, despite winning, he was not really the focus of the story, but still, getting win over like people that high up on the card, you would think that they would have something to follow up with this guy. But they clearly didn't, or at least didn't enough to want to see it through. So we should also mention Zelina was none too pleased that Sean Ross Sapp was the first to maybe get the news out there rather than allowing her to do it herself. So that brings up a debate about maybe like etiquette in announcing this sort of thing. I mean, in Sean Ross Sapp's defense, it's news, and
news.
and at what point do you how long do you wait until before making news public? So it's nonetheless an online debate that maybe is a talking point coming out of all of this. But any other thoughts on
Yeah, as I said from the top, I mean, we used to get the announcements from WWE itself on its website about the future. Wish X well in their future endeavors. We haven't had that in years, so we're reliant on reporting. And not every talent will want to announce
Address
it
it.
themselves. So there is that. Also, I do wonder what's next for Aleister Black. A return to AEW.
The big
doesn't
question
sound-
the big question is AEW. I mean, he was cool as hell in AEW in presentation, but I suppose like a reputation is out there about how much exactly he was willing to do in AEW.
That's right.
As a talent, I think he's totally undeniable. I would say the same about Zelina in her role specifically as a manager and what she's able to offer. That I think both of them, simply as talents, would be great fits for AEW. But I suppose there are concerns that are maybe not just about how good somebody is in ring, but how willing they are to accept perhaps booking decisions. Again, these are just like sort of rumor and innuendo. People look at Andrade like having a very different run this time around than maybe the first time.
Yeah.
I wonder if the door will be open for the both of them.
Interesting well, it's one to follow. We'll see. I mean, we do know he wanted to leave. That much is clear, because he did.
Partially because of his wife, but now his wife is free to go with him. Right?
True. Yeah. Who else have we got? The Motor City Machine Guns, both Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. Two guys who spent decades, winning championships everywhere else. Finally made it to WWE. Very hot debut in October of 2024, winning the tag titles in their second week. And now, roughly 18 months later, they're gone. And we haven't seen them on TV a great deal. You and I have been reviewing SmackDown a lot, and if we see them, it's generally hanging around backstage with some of the other tag team
They're
divisions.
still learning how to sign up for ESPN Plus, I think.
That seems to be their role. Yeah. This initial momentum was never to return for a team that are tremendous in ring, and I think we're one of the standouts pretty much in the run-up to WrestleMania this time last year, where the tag team division on SmackDown was kind of dominated by the workhorses, including these guys.
the 3 hour era, like the first time around,
First
like
time, yeah.
the idea seemed to really be, hey, we got 3 hours of show. Let's extend some of these matches and maybe like offer really, really good wrestling in our tag team division. And maybe that's part of the reason why the Machine Guns were brought in. I mean, this was one of the more feel good signings of the past year. I think everybody in the wrestling world was happy for them to finally get this sort of spotlight. And they had some great matches as part of like that tag division. But when the 3 hour era ended, I would say so too did their sort of relevance, on this show. They, along with most of that division, just became these background extras. And
Yep.
they were also building up some sort of story in the time that they did, had some tensions between the two of them that over Johnny Gargano that, again, did not see it play itself out. And where do you see these two ending up?
I could see these two in AEW quite easily. I think they'd be a great fit for that company because work rate is their thing. I think it is almost amusing in a dark way to think that the moment they get a storyline, which they've never really had, which is this sort of tension being brewing between the two of them over the past couple of weeks, somebody just decides, nah, we can't be asked with this,
Yeah.
We'll give them more
Well,
papers.
honestly, it's one of those where like I wonder if even the writing staff is made aware of these sort of things, or if it's just a direction from higher up that says, hey, like, what's expendable? Who is expendable? Because we have so many other talents to come in.
It is WrestleMania month at postwrestling.com. Wei Ting and John Pollock go live all WrestleMania week beginning Monday, April the 13th. Sign up for the Post Wrestling Cafe and you will get live shows all week long leading into our coverage that weekend of WrestleMania 42. This month, we're also bringing you reviews of Spring Break 2 from New Orleans in 2018 and a special Patrons Pick edition of Rewind Away. Sign up now at postwrestlingcafe.com, and this month, new subscribers get 50% off for the first month. Head on over to postwrestlingcafe.com.
As we talk about all of these and whether or not the AEW might be a place for them, I mean, we have to continue to remind ourselves there's not that much space in AEW, although Tony Khan and his sort of signing habits would maybe make you think that there's always room.
AEW roster bloat is a real thing, and we know they've got 4 hours of TV each week, but they've got major programs to build for every pay-per-view, and so we do get the biggest names, and a lot of people are on the sidelines. So, yeah, they've got an extremely deep bench already. Some of these people may well end up there, and honestly, I could see the Machine Guns because they've got a thriving tag team division. I could see the Machine Guns as someone Tony would want.
A return to TNA, I think, is also very possible too. We got Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, who Scott D'Amore obviously having a relationship with these two. So, yes, certainly, I would say like I think they'd be very like valuable free agents on the market. I do want to talk about maybe like a group of talents, perhaps in one here, like in Santos Escobar, Zoe Stark. We can throw in as well Tyson. Tyson here of Tyson and Tyreek, who all three of these talents are in some way either currently injured or just coming back from injury in the case of Zoe Stark. So Zoe Stark, we all saw her get injured. I believe it was like a springboard dropkick that looked awful. Just cleared from injury and released upon injury. Santos Escobar had a tricep surgery in March, said he was going for another surgery in April. And this one, I think, maybe especially notable due to some drama regarding his status back in October, where WWE reportedly, really actively wanted him to come back. So he did come back, put him into AAA. Then he got injured, and now he happens to be released. Also, Tyson announced this month that he was in for a hip surgery that was long overdue. He announced this. So he took some time out to address the issue, and now he and his partner don't seem to have jobs. So even though this may not be what WWE will say occurred, they will probably just suggest, hey, timing, whatever. The message that is directly being sent to your roster is that if you get hurt, you are of no more use to us. And if you don't get over, you are no use to us. So you better get over, which means for many of these people, wrestling harder, but don't wrestle so hard enough to the point where you get hurt.
Yeah. We saw this already with Rich Holland and kind of the saga of Luke Menzies stories coming out week after week, and him being fairly blunt about it all, and then sort of trying to take it back and all the rest of it. And out of the group that you're talking about, I think I feel probably the most for Zoe Stark. I mean, she had a terrible injury and then just had another one. She's had a year of rehab. I think there was reporting that she very, very recently, after that year, has been cleared. So she was healthy again. And now she's gone. So I feel very badly for her, but also anyone who is currently injured. I'd very much at least like to think that WWE will cover their medical expenses for injuries that they incurred while they were under contract. So we hope, of course, that Tyson, Tyreek, who else is injured?
Escobar.
Santos, of course, yeah.
It's
he's an interesting case because, like you said, he was leaving, and then they wanted him back, and I felt at the time that was really to try and bolster AAA and get a big name on there, but they seem content with just Berto and Angel from that original stable.
There's incredible talent here, really amongst like anybody on this list. I mean, if you are talented enough to be signed by WWE, you probably have something to offer. But like, especially in the case of Santos Escobar, I personally don't feel like certainly reached his ceiling in this company, and rather unfortunate, of course.
Apollo Crews, we should probably mention, because he's another main roster man who's been around for years at this point, through all sorts of incarnations. And he is someone, to what I said earlier on about repackaging, they have tried to repackage when he went to NXT, had that sort of supernatural gimmick. He's been through everything with the Commander Aziz by his side. They've tried a lot with Apollo, and I feel, as cruel as it might sound to say it, this is one of the more understandable cuts in my view.
Understandable in that, like, after a talent goes down to NXT to sort of rehabilitate or at least rework, their gimmick, and they're brought back up not to be used, where else does a talent go from there? It's not like you're going to be sent back to NXT to develop a new character. So I don't exactly like, that was 2023 when he was brought back from NXT, and he's really done nothing since then. He was injured for a part of it there, but I agree, not that surprising. It was almost never featured on TV, and we look back, he might have had his most serious push as that sort of like Nigerian accent type of character with Commander Aziz by his side, which I guess only had a certain shelf life, but he's another guy who, I feel is so incredibly talented, and like, he's got an amazing look. And I mean, his promo is probably not as strict, but it also wasn't that bad, so I would love to see what he does back, either in Japan or in AEW possibly.
Yeah. Alba Fire's another one I think we should mention. Part of the Secret Harvest. Piper Niven, pretty seriously injured, we feel. At least she's been on the shelf for a long time. So Alba was sort of left on her own with Chelsea Green as her sole, slagent. And she's been given the elbow. Of course, we know that her former tag team partner, remind me, Way.
Isla Dawn.
Isla Dawn got this treatment this time last year. So at that time, again, this is going to sound somewhat cruel, I was somewhat surprised that both of them didn't get their papers at the same time. But Alba has never really taken off in a way that's not as an adjunct to another talent. I think, it's either in a tag team or alongside Chelsea.
Yeah. I have to say, like, with Alba Fire in particular, first of all, like, she and Isla Dawn had that wonderful moment on that Scotland show, winning those tag titles. And they had that tag title run, but I can't really say it was a run that was all that notable, because most of these tag title runs, unfortunately, in the women's division are not booked to be that notable. Yeah. But, like her NXT UK run, where she was the longest reigning champion. I mean, that I think already speaks enough of maybe like her value and what she is able to bring to the table that I don't think has ever been translated very well to the main roster. So I can certainly say, like, in watching her, I'm sure Chelsea, like this was her lifeline. This whole run with Chelsea probably like saved her job for at least a year. But I can't ever say she looked committed to the part or that she felt appropriate for the part at all. Like, it felt like she was just sitting there and honestly counting down the days, which I hope now that she's out of this, like, perhaps she can actually show what she's capable of. As she tweets herself here, her first tweet after this news came out: Kaylee Ray would batter Alba Fire. Just saying. So these sort of like, people who seem like really pent up to want to prove themselves outside of the WWE character that the box that they're put into are often some of the most exciting ones. And certainly we open up the possibility of an Island reunion, who possibly in Ring of Honor and possibly in AEW, and I guess therefore some sort of super faction with GYV as well, with all of them.
True, yeah, and people who remember Kaylee Ray as in the NXT UK system will know that she's a great worker. And like you said, Way, when she got the call up as a tag team, they were pretty good. But as the Secret Service person, like, she's just there to interfere on the apron to cause a distraction. And the very few singles matches that she's had, given virtually no time.
Yeah,
so I think there could be a new life for her.
Chelsea Green does tweet here: you guys didn't get to see how talented Kaylee Ray is. I know you saw bits and pieces, but trust me, there's so much more to her. She's a fearless wrestler. I'm sad to not have her on my side, but this is just the beginning for my girl. Thank you for having my back. Slagent A, love you.
Yeah. But yeah, of course, she's going to wrestle somewhere else. I'm pretty certain about that. I think we've covered most of the main roster folks.
Yeah. Well, let's just go through some of the list here. We got Andre Chase, who, like, this gimmick he's been doing since 2021, and certainly got over in the PC. But for whatever reason, they never wanted to give the gimmick a chance on the main roster. And when a gimmick has been in developmental since 2021, especially like for 5 years now, especially now when there's so many more people that they're pushing up, and NXT is even, it seems like very like difficult to get airtime for. I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall for this one. They had the group essentially ended in 2024 with that Ridge Holland feud, and there was a bit of a half-assed attempt to restart it with Uriah Connors, and when he left, I mean, unfortunately, nothing else for Andre Chase, which is sad because he's a very talented person, clearly. Tyra May Steele is an interesting one. This is, of course, what's her real name? Tamara May Stock?
Mensa Stock?
Tyra Mensa Stock, yes. Okay. Tyra May Steele, she is the LFG Season 1 winner here, and made some NXT main roster appearances, has been wrestling on Evolve, but like, because of her background, you would figure she'd be given a bit of a longer rope to develop and more time to develop. But again, we don't know the circumstances behind the departure, but this is one that is going to end right here.
Yeah, I don't know a great deal about Tamara Mensa Stock, other than, she's an Olympic gold medalist at the 2020 Games. 33, so, not too old to develop, you would have thought. But again, we're left with speculation about the reasons for all of these. It's hard to believe that they're all roster cuts in the sense of, we're going to release you from your contract. Maybe a few people had voiced the desire to leave, and this was the day they were just going to, on a Friday night, dump everybody.
Certainly,
it's difficult to know.
Certainly. So we'll see where she turns up. I mean, if Gable Steveson was in a very similar situation and now looks to be headed fully into a career in MMA, so we'll see what Tyra May Steele does in the future. And then we got Malik Blade, Luca Crucifino. Malik Blade, not somebody I think you would have heard from so much. Had a team with Edris Enofe, who's also no longer on the roster. Only had 4 house shows since he came back from injury late last year. Luca Crucifino, of course, was in the faction with Tony D'Angelo. He was building to this he was developing a new Raver character in Evolve, and I was very excited to maybe see it continue. But I guess they weren't as impressed with what he was working on. Then we also have a few LFG participants here in Chris Island, Serena Linton, and Trill London, who I can't really say I can say much about.
LFG isn't shown where I live, even so. I'm not at all familiar with these folks, and I have to admit, in the time I have to devote to wrestling outside of my proper job and all the rest of it, Evolve is not on my schedule either. So, a lot of those talents are just people I'm not familiar with. But I think what it goes to show is, there was a trailer in tonight's SmackDown for the new season of LFG, and it's like, there's no, you could impress all of these legends and be a future great, to give the LFG letters their meaning, and just be on the chopping block in no time.
Yeah, but at this point, like this seems to be at least some pattern that is being established of these roster cuts happening the week after WrestleMania, in conjunction with main roster debuts and the ladder constantly moving up. And that feels like it's a process that might be greater now than it ever has been. This machine is just like moving at a much faster pace, and people are maybe more replaceable than ever, especially if you're in the mid card.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. It goes back to something I said earlier on. Instead of having to repackage existing wrestlers whose gimmicks are perhaps not working out or storylines aren't great, they have a very deep pool right down into the WWE ID program at this point, where they can call people up, and given the reality of the independent contractor system, and the fact that a lot of these people's dream is to get to WrestleMania, get to WWE, there's pretty much an endless pipeline that they can mine, instead of having to try and repackage talent that they already have, who perhaps, to be mercenary about it, to be the accountant here, perhaps their pay scale is not matching what they're doing on television in terms of just standing around listening to R-Truth tell you how to log into ESPN.
Well, that might be how the accountant would talk about it. I mean, they certainly have plenty to celebrate here, and I suppose part of that celebration is making sure that you keep your costs low, which like on this, any thoughts on that? On the same week that they're announcing, I mean, they're constantly announcing these successes, but on the same week that we're hearing about these bonuses to TKO executives also getting this sort of news out there, do you think TKO cares at all? No. We're talking about like a storm of bad PR, you could suggest, over the course of WrestleMania build, the road to WrestleMania, and it kind of culminates seemingly in something like this.
It's a very easy no to that question. I don't think they give a shit. They've had probably the second most successful financially WrestleMania ever. If it had been the most, they would have said so. But I think some of the gate loss was more than compensated for by a bigger site fee and the filming tax credit in Nevada. John and Brandon have been over all of this on Pollock and Thurston last night. A very, very, very successful WrestleMania. I think I'm talking about it purely in financial terms, and I think that's what TKO cares about. As long as they can wring a bit of extra ticket price money out of people, as long as they can get their FIPs, their financial incentive packages from cities and municipalities to host their events, as long as they can shift merch, I don't really think they care very much that the product is perhaps not getting critical acclaim. Particularly night one of WrestleMania, which I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about, but I thought was dire, and it was really just a very bad night of WrestleMania. So, long way of saying no. I don't think TKO cares about the bad publicity at all. Just look at the Andreas Hale story. I mean, that didn't even really take off beyond the wrestling bubble as a mainstream ESPN combat sports reporter, an actual journalist, just being knocked back credentials wise, seemingly because of letter grades and perhaps a story on the Janelle Grant.
A story like that, like really, it seems like so within the bubble of what I think this company only cares about, which is headlines that might affect the stock. And when you take that into account, the news of roster members being cut is probably actually positive news for people who only care about that number, knowing that, less money would be going to production while profits continue to rise.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's the era we're in now. That is absolutely the era we're in now with TKO, and you see it everywhere. You visually see it when you watch the shows because the mat is covered in sponsorships. The PLEs have 4-minute ad breaks in them, and then everything is sponsored, right up to somebody sitting mute at the announce desk.